Hello, this is Paul talking about A Course in Miracles, and today the topic is specialness and special relationships. When I first read the Course and it talked about special relationships, it was kind of hard to understand, and I remember thinking that specialness was just some kind of like way of describing a bad relationship, or there's ego in the relationship. And I found out over time and recently that there's much more to it than this, and the idea of specialness is actually much further reaching than just your relationships. It actually began in heaven, in the separation idea, where we tried to ask for special favor. So God created many beings, many sons of God, and all of the sons of God are equal. So you have Son of God, Son of God, Son of God, Son of God. All of them are perfectly equal. They're all like each other. They're all in the likeness of God. And every single one of them is perfect and whole and doesn't need to compete with each other. And none of them are special. None of them are different to the others. And separation, a much better word, I think, for separation is difference or opposition, because people get really hung up on this separation word and start looking for any sign of separation and saying, oh, that must be ego. It's not really accurate enough. It's better to say that the separation idea, or the separation from God, was the idea of either being opposite to God or the idea of being different to others. And lack of differences is actually correct. And lack of differences is natural and normal, and it's reality. And it doesn't mean that there are no individuals. It does not mean that there aren't many sons of God. It doesn't mean that the sonship with many parts to it is part of the ego. It just means that there are many things that are not different to each other, kind of like clones or copies. They're perfectly identical, and in their perfect identicalness, you're not used to. In this world, you're not used to seeing things that are perfectly identical, because everything here is different to everything else. Even blades of grass are similar, but they're not perfect copies. They're not exactly, immaculately, perfectly identical. And the sons of God are perfectly identical. And in the lack of differences and the lack of one of them being in some way different to the others, there is perfect harmony, there's perfect peace, all the relationships are holy, as God intended it, and all your brothers are equal. You cannot enter into relationship with any of God's sons unless you're willing to love them all equally. That's what the Course says. So God's sons are permanent creations in reality, and that's your brothers. And any reference in the Course to the word brothers actually is referring to the individual souls that God created in heaven that are permanent parts of reality, separate beings. That people don't like this idea of separate beings. Oh my God, duality, fuck. But the separation from God, or the opposition to God, or the attempt to be different, didn't take place in the creation. It didn't take place. It's not an aspect of God creating many beings. It is. It only takes place in our mind, which is inside the souls, and doesn't affect the souls. And the separation between souls is not ego separation. The ego is confined to the mind, and so a lot of people get mixed up with this. Anyway, so in heaven, everyone was identical, and everyone still is identical, you and I are perfectly mirror images of each other, and being in the likeness of each other and the likeness of God, we are both equals. We're perfectly equal. Everything that applies to me applies to you. Every rule is true of both of us. Whatever's true of me is true of you. I don't have anything that you don't have. You don't have anything exclusive that I can't have also. And so we share everything equally and fully in heaven. And this is the natural state of existence. This is what God created. See, God, you can describe God as oneness, but you have to acknowledge God isn't just sitting there picking his nose. God is a creator, and he has created, which means he's actually expressed something and has gone past oneness and now has created many things. And people, that's not the same thing as duality. Sounds like it is, but it is not the same thing. Now, into heaven there crept a tiny mad idea where we forgot to laugh. And the idea was that you requested special favor from God, where some of the sons of God tried to say, I want to have some kind of special treatment that only I get and others don't get, and I exalt myself above them and put them beneath me, and created an imbalance or a inequality. And within that idea, that's the entire separation idea. It's the idea of not being equal and not being the same as others. And from that state of many beings that are identical going into a state of many beings that are not identical, that's how we went into the ego. The ego is the idea of being different and not the same as and exclusive from others, which does mean other brothers who really exist. And so we tried to be special. And so at the very foundation of the whole ego thought system is the idea of specialness, which basically means you want to section off something for you and reject some other stuff and say, this stuff here that I have, this is the good stuff. That stuff over there is the stuff I don't want. I get this special limited focus that gives me what I want, takes it away from others and denies it to others. And so I now have something that's me or about myself that other people do not have. And therefore I'm special. And I've got some special treatment. So now I've got the special, I don't know, I've got the special car, and the other people have the crap car, or I get the special food and the other people get the leftovers, or whatever it is, whatever the way that it plays out later. It's all based on the idea, the fundamental metaphysical idea of I don't want to have everything. I don't want everyone else to have everything. And I want there to be a narrowing down of what is available and who I am, so that I can kind of hoard and take possession of a bunch of stuff and deny it to others, and therefore separate myself from them through the idea of being different to them. So separation really does mean difference and being opposed to and not the same as. And oneness actually does not mean there's only one big blob of something. Oneness actually means being of like kind and therefore being identical and equal in every way. That's what oneness means, being one nature that is the same nature as the rest, the same rules as everyone else, the same access and sharing as everyone else. And so when you go away from I'm gonna share everything with everyone and be unconditionally loving, and we're all equal and everyone's allowed to have the same stuff and nobody's denied, and then you go into this kind of an isolated mode, which is the ego, where you're being selfish. The ego is the idea of selfishness, and the soul is the idea of self-fullness. This is literally what the Course says. So being in your soul means being all of yourself and having access to everything and sharing everything equally with everyone. Being selfish means being ego, and it means going away from that into isolation, trying to have something exclusive that is only applies to you and doesn't apply to others, and therefore emphasizes that we're different, and disconnected from sharing and not sharing something with others. So the ego is opposed to sharing, and everything in heaven is very sharing. And you cannot escape the fact that when you try to hoard a chunk of reality for yourself and you want to deny it to others and they get the rest, even if you value that highly and you think, oh, this is special and I've got special attention and special interests and special value and a special identity and I'm more important, or whatever selfish ego concept it is, you also simultaneously must be lacking the other stuff that makes the specialness possible. So I cannot be special unless I'm missing the other stuff that I've decided is the not special stuff. So fundamentally, in a state of specialness, you don't have everything. And that means that you have sacrificed and you have lost and you're lacking. So simultaneously, in a state of being special, you believe that you've got something of great value, but at the same time, you must believe and cannot escape the perception that you also don't have something else, and you justify that it's okay not to have it because you judge it and say that's the crap stuff that I don't want. Let them have that shit, but I want this. And this is the good stuff. But that doesn't give you peace, and it doesn't give you a sense of fulfillment, and it doesn't make you satisfied. It's never enough. You in specialness, you always feel that you've been deprived and you're lacking, and something's been taken away from you, and you've lost something, and other people have the stuff that you don't have. And this is the basis of the laws of chaos, where now different values and different truths, like this, the things that I think are special are my truth, is different from other people. So now I think that other people have a different truth, and then by the fact that we have differences must mean that we're sinners, because I must have attacked them in order to push away the stuff that I don't think is special, and to hold on tightly to the stuff I think special. And that also works the other way around, where I must also believe my brother has stolen from me the rest of the wholeness that I rejected by trying to be special, the things that I need to not have in order to have specialness. They have it, and it's in them. And now I must believe that they have stolen it from me and they're keeping it from me, and it's locked up inside themselves, and therefore the only way to get it from them is through murderous attack, that I must now attack my brother in order to take back from him the specialness that he seems to have that I don't have, in order to complete myself. Because you've also lost a sense of identity by going into specialness. Your identity was wholeness, the fullness of yourself, your soul. You were full of self. That's not a bad thing, and had access to sharing everything with everyone, and therefore had everything. Is a condition of sharing that you, in order to have it, you have to share it. When you denied it to others and denied it to yourself in order to make something more special and have an artificial sense of value, you also denied part of your identity. You diminished the wholeness and the fullness of yourself and had to cut off part of yourself. And now you perceive that you're confined to this body where you have specialness, and other people seem to be the place where the rest of you is hidden. And so now you think that, okay, now you're in a seek and do not find thing where you're like, I'm lacking self and I'm lacking something, even though I think that specialness is going to save me and I want to be more special. Simultaneously, I feel lacking, and the more special that I try to become, the more I lack and sacrifice myself. And then the more I believe that other people have stolen me from myself and are keeping me separate from the thing that's missing. And the thing that's missing is really the rest of myself. And in the sense of lack, I will be compelled to seek and not find. And I'll seek outside myself and think other people have in them the stuff that I don't have. So the rest of me has been stolen by other people. And so in order to get myself back, I need to take it from others. And eventually, when that becomes really extreme, it becomes murderous and attacking and justified, that you're justified in attacking other people to take back the rest of the self that you denied when you tried to be special, and you want to rip it from them. and similarly, in physical intimacy, you try to merge back into the rest of yourself, to complete yourself in another person, by making somebody else also seem very special. And if you remember, that specialness is also isolation and exclusivity, and things applying over here that don't apply over there. It's murderous, and you make somebody special by simultaneously wanting to kill them. So I cannot make a person out to be special without isolating them and making them exclusive and relating to them in an exclusive way and saying, only this is how what I will share with you, and I will not share it with that, and we'll keep ourselves in a box together, and this is going to be the most wonderful relationship ever. It's going to be a special relationship. This person is the most highly valued, important savior of specialness, who's come to save me from my suffering, the self-imposed specialness. By them being very special and very valuable, and when I get my body close to their body and we fuck, this is some kind of a ritual symbol of how we're joining with each other, and merging together, and through that act somehow I'm going to somehow reunite with the lost other half of self, and therefore become whole again, except that it doesn't work, and it's very short-lived, and you go right back into separateness again. It's kind of humid in here today. See if I can blow some gas. So then you start having special relationships that are based on the double-edged sword that is specialness, which is one part, this is very valuable and special and spiritualized and important, and one other part, this is worthless and hated, and I don't want it, and I want to attack it and make myself separate from it. You have to do both of those things when you are in specialness, because you require attacking the rest in order to make your little thing special. So trying to be special is trying to be ego. It's trying to be selfish. It separates you off from the others, from all of your brothers, and from God by excluding them, literally excluding them, pushing them away and saying, I don't want to be like you. I don't want to be the same as you. I don't want the rules that apply to you to apply to me. I'm going to deny the golden rule. I want to be able to cause without receiving the effects of what I cause, and therefore get away with murder. And the attempt to become exclusive, which is specialness, to be unique, to be different, to be, and this doesn't mean being individual. Having an individual self is not an ego thing. You can have many, many individuals that are all identical and perfectly alike and perfectly harmonious and in love with each other and sharing everything and being perfectly at peace. That's how it is in heaven. It doesn't matter that there's individuals there, and it doesn't matter that they're separate individuals, because they're sharing everything with each other openly and fully, and so they're not lacking anything, and there's no conflict. But when you get into ego, and the separate self really means I'm trying to make myself cut off from sharing and making myself put in a box and isolated. Your free will becomes imprisoned by this egotism. The more that you try to have a special will or a separate will, your will becomes more isolated and you have less freedom. You go away from being the fullness of yourself, your soul, and you become not yourself. Being the ego is not being yourself. And so when you wake up from the ego, you're not going to die and stop being yourself. You're actually going to return to yourself, and you're going to expand yourself and become more of yourself, the self that God created you to be, a brother equal to the other brothers. And so when you go into specialness and go into ego and go into selfishness, you automatically are pulling yourself away from life and away from your brothers and sectioning things off and saying, I only want the things inside this fence, and the things outside this fence are evil and deadly and bad, and I want to get rid of them. And that creates an inequality, an attack. That's an attacking perception. It isolates you from others, and that's what the separation really means, is that you can be two separate individuals, but when the two individuals are not agreeing, and they're not seeing eye to eye, and they're not identical, and they're not in the same likeness, and now they're unequal, and something's applying to one and not the other, and one of them's trying to be special and selfish, and the other one's trying to rip that away from them and have it for themselves, that's when you're getting into ego. And that whole process causes you to become little and causes you to become a body. And the body is that device for separation that is the idea of being isolated from the rest. The body is a fence built around the Son of God, not just the one Son, but every Son of God builds a fence around them to isolate themselves in order for them to be able to be special, so that the other people are the not special ones. And then you show up as different. In case you hadn't noticed, all bodies are different, and they're not identical. Even identical twins are not perfectly identical. You have to be an exact clone sharing the same space as somebody else in order to be identical. So the body is the end result of that process of trying to be special, trying to get specialness and isolate off something unique that is different over here and is different over there, so that we can then identify with that separate special thing. And if you remember, your identity is actually involved in this process of becoming special. Is you go away from the fullness of yourself, your full soul, and you narrow down to being a special self, which your sense of identity gets caught up in that sense of specialness, and you start believing, I am this special one. Those ones over there are my enemies who have stolen the rest of me, and they're also special, and I'm going to have some special relationships with them, and the specialness in the relationship's going to be based on a stripped-down version of love, covering up a secret motive of murderousness, special hatred. You cannot have special love without being in special hatred, because you have to reject something in order to make something special. So you become identified with the form of the specialness, and that means if you've gone away from wholeness into a finite space, you've imprisoned your will, you've stopped being yourself, you've isolated yourself, you've become limited and little and small and weak and afraid, and that has manifested as a body. The human physical body is the result of that attempt to be separate and the attempt to be special. It is a device for separation, and that's why it doesn't exist, Jesus says. So then you think, my identity is this body, because this body allows me to be kept apart from others. It causes me to be lonely. It makes me restricted and isolated to a point in space, as though to say, I'm only here, and all the rest of the stuff that's out there is not where I am, because you're not sharing with all that stuff. The body was made to take the entire universe and shut out almost the entire universe except for this tiny little space where the body is, so that you can say, I am only here and I'm not over there. And this place where I am is very, very different to what's over there. And I'm very, very special in my very special body that I'm in love with. And it's my favorite thing. and we're going to decorate it and work at a stupid, pointless task to earn strips of paper and silver discs in order to buy ridiculous items that we don't need, in order to decorate the body and put the body in a building to shelter it and protect it and drive it around in a flashy car and do all this bullshit stuff in specialness, in worship of the body, because we think the body is so important and so special. It is the symbol of specialness and the symbol of being kept apart from and not sharing with others. And so those who become very, very selfish, you'll notice, tend to adore themselves, their body. They tend to be very arrogant and self-centered and self-absorbed, and love to buy lots of stuff to show how important they are and the value that they have, and all this fake value that is actually a substitute for real love and real sharing and real equality and real value. So in a way, specialness is just another word for separation, and separation is another word for being different or exclusive. And you'll notice this whole world worships exclusivity. You know, you get like a product or something that somebody creates, and the best product you can create is something that's so unique and so special and so unlike the rest, and never seen before, never seen anywhere else, and does something miraculously amazing, and is fervently owned and possessed by some company who has stranglehold on it and the rights to it, and files a patent and vehemently defends it from any attacks. It's idol worship, which is the same thing as being special. Whenever you're getting into worshiping special things, you are in idol worship, and you're in idol worship because you think you lack the whole of yourself, and so there's lack in you, so now you need to find outside of yourself the thing that's lacking that you want to keep separate. And put it on a pedestal and make it special, and bow down in unworthiness and being less than, and I'm not worthy, and they're so fucking amazing, I love them so much, they're my celebrities and my amazing teachers that I hang on every word of them, and the special books and the special animals and the special people and the special places and the special property and the little toys and the puppies and the kittens and the sunsets and all this stuff that is worshipped in specialness in order to reinforce the belief that you are separated off from things, and because you're not special enough or you're not lovable enough, therefore you need to have an idol to worship. And so all of this idol worship is fake gods and worshiping things that you think will save you from your state of lacking yourself, and external causes and external truths and special people and special books and special courses and special facts and special types of jobs and all this external special things that are supposed to save you from your suffering. But it's fucking bullshit, because while you maintain that you are special and that you need to be saved, you are emphasizing your specialness. You don't want to give it up. and yet you want something outside you to save you from the sense of loss and lack that you have, and the deprivation and the sacrifice that has come about because of trying to be special. And you're saying that you want this external thing to save you from that, to do something special to you, to cause you to change into a state that's a better improvement. And you'll notice this happens with, like, this egotism causes all your problems, and then the same egotism sets up an external savior which is going to come along and do something favorable to you that you think you want in order to get the stuff that you're lacking in your specialness, to cause you to have a happier experience. So now you have the ego is making you suffer, and the ego is coming up with a solution as to how you can end the suffering in a way that maintains the suffering and keeps the specialness and the separation, and therefore it doesn't fucking work. And you are not saved by these special idols and these special people, because they don't have the ability to give you what you are denying yourself and what you've chosen to reject from God's creation. You're the one who is choosing to be special and choosing to be lacking and choosing to want to have this artificial sense of value, which is not what's going to make you feel strong or confident or happy or peaceful or fulfilled or satisfied. It's a very poor substitute that you accept these pieces of bullshit wrapped up in bullshit bows, these little gifts and scraps of shit from the world that we've set up in our choice to be special as replacements for the gaping hole of emptiness and hell that we ourselves implemented in order to try to deny that we already had everything that we ever could want in heaven with God. So basically, specialness does not work. It is fundamentally flawed. You cannot have specialness without losing something. The ego in you loves to section off something and say that it's the not special or the not good enough or it's bad or it's evil or it's wrong or it's sinful, and try to keep a distance from that stuff in order to emphasize how the stuff that you keep in your persona is the good stuff, and it's the valuable stuff and the acceptable stuff. And then but by doing that, it has attacked you. It has said, okay, this part of you is not acceptable, this part of you is acceptable, the acceptable part is special, the not acceptable part is evil. And now you have a split mind. Now you have an unconscious where you dumped your sinful shit, and now you're in denial, and you're in this special persona, this facade of extreme denial of your real self, and pretending to be something that you're not. This special self that is made up as a very poor replacement and a cover over who you really are, your real self. So you can't have the specialness without the sacrifice, and you can't externalize your Savior without failing to be saved. You cannot do idol worship without being considered inferior. Then you'll get these superiority and inferiority complexes. So the entire ego thought system is based on this idea of being special, because specialness means exclusion, exclusivity, isolation, imprisonment, lack, sacrifice, artificial value, attachment, thinking that you want something and desire something that's completely pointless and meaningless, becoming identified with forms and with a body which locates you in a single place in space so that you're not sharing everything, which means you instantly lack. I don't have what they have, so now I'm freaking lacking, and now I'm jealous, and now I want to get what they have, and I'm going to maliciously attack in order to try to get it. Or otherwise I have to go through stupid sacrificial activities in order to get enough value to be able to exchange the value for other pointless, valueless bullshit. And it's crazy. So everything about the ego is about being special and selfish and wanting to have something that denies other people that same stuff so that only you have it, and that makes you different and unique, but it also makes you lacking, and it makes you incomplete and unwhole and at a loss, and so now you're suffering. And then to try to compensate for the suffering and cover it up, you create this veneer of special, happy, I want this and I want that bullshit to try to deny that you have this emptiness. And the emptiness that you have is that you're not being all of yourself. You're not being the fullness of yourself. You're not allowing yourself to share in the wholeness of reality and existence. You're not letting yourself have your inheritance from God, which has been kept for you. So you're denying yourself, literally denying yourself, and denying yourself access to the riches of heaven, and not letting yourself be loved, making yourself have suffering and poverty and a lack of abundance and limitation and finite amounts of things, thinking that that's normal when you're supposed to be fucking unlimited in every way. The only way that you can have everything is to share everything with everyone, because they also have to be able to have everything. So the only way the two of you can have everything is if you share it. That's the rule of heaven, that every single soul, every son of God that God created has to share fully in order to have all of what they are, because their own self is fullness and wholeness. As soon as you try to isolate and deny and section off something as yours and not theirs, which is selfish, you instantly will split your mind, and now you're lacking your own self, and you will forget who you are, and you'll start to become isolated and small and suffer in a body, and eventually that denial of self will result in death. So death is the very end consequence of trying to be special. So go ahead and try and be as special as you damn well please. It will end in death. So clearly that is insane. And Jesus says in the Course that you try to exchange sanity for specialness. So it's only to have all, give all to all, to have everything, you must share it with everyone else. Otherwise, you cannot have all of it. Everyone has to share everything, including your sense of self, with the whole of existence, all of creation, and God. Otherwise, you're going to be limited and lacking and suffer. So to go away from death, literally, is to go away from specialness. It is to go back towards wholeness and fullness, which means health, and to go away from death towards resurrection and life and eternal life and having the entire inheritance of heaven. It's yours and it's everyone else's to share. If you don't want to share, you're going to end up with nothing. So if you want to, you're giving up nothing by giving up specialness and artificial values, and gaining everything by letting go of the ego, the egotism of selfishness, and this is different for me and them, and we're not equals, and I don't like that person, but I like this person. Not being unconditionally loving, not being equal, not seeing every brother as your equal, not recognizing the identicality of everyone, induces illness, causes sickness and death, because you are mentally ill when you're trying not to share heaven. You're trying to split your mind off from sharing the wholeness and the fullness of heaven, and that means you've attacked your own mind in order to make yourself special, and you've disassociated yourself from another part of yourself, and now you have a split mind. You are mentally ill, and that fostering of separation is self-attack, and it will attack your body and make sickness and death. So if you want to be free from death, which is preferable, you have to be free from specialness, free from isolation, free from anything applying to you that doesn't apply to others, free from all sense of sin and guilt and fear and attack and inequality of any kind, which includes the body. You cannot be believing in being a body if you want to be sane and whole-minded. Your sanity should shine away the body, because the body was a device for separation and a symptom of trying to be special and isolated. So if you're not going to be isolated, the body cannot contain who you are. It must disappear. The body's not real. It doesn't exist. It's not who you are. So you have to overlook and not identify yourself or confine yourself to a body. And you cannot confine others to bodies either. You have to set both of you free by overlooking, forgiving bodies, all illusions of forms of difference. Every object, every physical object is an illusion of being different and not equal. You have to see past the whole fucking universe and recognize your brother's perfect equality with you, absolutely equal and identical in every way, in order to see the Christ in them that's in you, and in order to see God is in the world God is in everything I see, because God's in my mind. What is in you, you will perceive outside you. So if you're believing that you're special and not equal, you will see special enemies instead of seeing your innocent holy brothers, and you'll fixate on bodies and get into special forms of relationship that are fundamentally dysfunctional. Every form of exclusivity is dysfunction. Families that own children, lineages and hierarchies of parents and children and grandparents, families, national identities, cultural identities, identifying with a gender or being male or female or a certain kind of body, certain sexual preferences or belief systems, whatever it is, if it cannot apply to everyone equally, it must be false. And you have to let it go in order to become healthy and sane and happy and go home to God. You cannot take the body with you. You cannot have the special stuff in heaven. You have to let it go. Otherwise, you're holding on to it with your mind. And even if you die and you're in the other side of being dead, your mind is still attached to having special things, and those are like anchors in this dream that will pull you back into a body, because you're still wanting to be where the specialness is, which is in form, and it makes you reincarnate. So if you want to overcome birth and death and reincarnation, you have to let go of every artificial value of specialness in the entire universe. Recognize it's all an illusion. None of it's true. This world holds nothing that I want. There are no pleasures in the world that a teacher of God wouldn't be happy to give up. That's not quite the exact wording, but it's basically, if you're going to be a teacher of God, there's got to be nothing in this world that you want more than being with God. Otherwise, you want specialness. So this idea of specialness is totally far-reaching. It's not just about relationships. It's about your entire separation from God. Every part of the ego thought system is about specialness and about trying to be different and not have equality and not recognize that you are in the likeness of your brothers and in the likeness of God, and you are therefore as God created you. Specialness is a denial of yourself. It is a denial of who you are. It's a denial of heaven, a denial of your inheritance. It is how you choose death. It is how you cause sickness. The more special that you try to make things, the sicker you will become. The more that you separate yourself off from others, the sicker you will become. That's not healthy. The more that you isolate and put yourself in boxes, and certain relationship boxes, and special people that get special treatment that other special people don't get, that is sickness. That is a dysfunctional relationship inherently. You cannot enter into a relationship with any of God's children unless you love them all equally. That is what the Course says. So you must get back to this holy relationship, this heavenly state of relating, which completely bypasses everything physical and recognizes that every person is your equal and in no way different in any way. To have unconditional love, the same response to every person, the same love, the same value, the same recognition, the same gratitude, the same appreciation. Otherwise, you are believing in specialness, which means you believe in separation, and that is going to attack you and ultimately keep you from happiness and health and joy and laughter and holiness and innocence and peace and being loved and being with God and being in your natural state with God. Specialness is an attack on reality. It is an attempt to say that somehow God is favoring you more than others. And you're the special chosen one. And therefore, even when you tried to do that, God did not comply. He did not acknowledge your request for specialness. And therefore, you demanded to be treated special, causing yourself to go into specialness. You put yourself there Therefore, you can change your mind, choose again, and go back towards love and wholeness and letting go of being special, letting go of isolation, letting go of imprisonment, setting yourself free, being happy, and returning to who you really are, your full self, instead of this isolated little shriveled up, ugly little fucker that you think you are, that is not yourself. This ego concentration of fear is not you. That's what gets released and let go to reveal underneath the fact that you're still as God created you, and you're still equal and identical and the same as everyone else. God loves you as an equal child of God. God loves you equally and fully in the way that He loves every child of God equally and fully. You don't need or want special treatment, because it's not special treatment. It is a double-edged sword of fake special treatment combined with lack and suffering. How desirable is that in comparison to being fully loved, unconditionally loved, forever and ever, and sharing all of existence with all of your brothers equally in love and happiness? Isn't that more desirable than being special, being free from death, free from suffering and sickness? God's will for me is perfect happiness. You can only get to perfect happiness and permanent immortality by letting go of trying to be special. So that's a sort of a big ass picture of what specialness is about, and it's the same thing as isolating and separating and suffering and causing disease and sickness and death. And so the opposite of specialness is to not be special, which sounds horrible to the ego. Let's not be special. I just want to be average. But in not being special, you gain everything. In not being special, you get access to fucking massive love. In not being special, you gain everything, including yourself and all the stuff that you think you lost in the specialness. Your inheritance comes back to you, and it's unlimited. There's nothing that you could truly want more than to be free of specialness and to receive and accept that there is no alternative to God's love. There is no substitute for God's love. And God's love is the only thing that you want. And it's the only thing that means anything to you. And everything else is illusion. So, cut it out. Stop being fucking special. I'm the one that's special, not you. We're both holy and equal and innocent and free, and God bless, and love and light, and the end of specialness is the end of death. See you next time.